Yes. Folks, we're not even close to being done. At lunch, we have 2 panels. We hope you'll have time to interact with our guests. And while you're continuing eating, I'm going to welcome the guests for the Olmsted Act panel to come on stage.
Activists in the independent living movement organized to demand an end to segregation for Americans with disabilities, who were denied basic rights like attending schools, holding jobs, or choosing homes. This led to a major milestone with the U.S. Supreme Court's Olmsted decision. Like Brown versus Board of Education, the decision that ended racial segregation in public schools, Olmsted affirmed the idea that nobody can be separated from society and denied the right to make decisions for themselves. But it wasn't always this way. For decades, Americans with disabilities were largely housed in facilities, like nursing homes, psychiatric hospitals, or in developmental disability institutions, where residents had to follow rules about things like when and what they could eat, when they could go outside, and even who they were allowed to date or marry. Society had an institutional bias, leaving few alternatives for people with disabilities. Disability activists fought back by organizing. From the 1960s to the 80s, activists staged protests and demonstrations, cases moved through the courts, and new legislation was passed, expanding access to housing, education, employment, and healthcare. Finally, a sweeping civil rights bill known as the Americans with Disabilities Act passed in 1990. Despite this progress, there were still gaps. People with disabilities could still be institutionalized. Then, in 1999, the case of Olmsted versus Lois Curtis and Elaine Wilson was brought before the Supreme Court. In the Olmsted decision, the court concluded that people with disabilities have a right to receive state-funded supports in the community, rather than in facilities, affirming the argument that had been made by advocates for decades. Having these choices isn't more expensive. In fact, it costs less. In 2009, the National Council on Disability found the annual cost of institutional care was more than community-based supports in every state, $188,000 per person in a facility versus only about $42,000 for comparable services in the community. Later, cases based on Olmsted pushed states to create plans to reduce their institutionalized populations. Yet, progress has been slow. According to the last U.S. Census in 2010, over 2 million people were housed in some kind of facility. But community living isn't just a preference, it's a civil right. That's the legacy of the Olmsted decision. You have the right to choose your community and the right to access supports you may need in your home, rather than in a facility. For more information in North Dakota, contact the Protection and Advocacy Project at 1-800-472-2670 or at ndpanda.org. Produced by Rooted in Rights.
All right, so welcome and thank you for your time to discuss such a very important topic. Our time today is short and we want to hear from all of you. Please, each one of you introduce yourself and give a brief visual description for our audience. So thank you. I have a couple questions for you. And go ahead and introduce yourselves, guys.
Hi, my name is Dan Gulia. I'm a short, balding white guy with glasses in a blue shirt.
That's pretty brief, Dan. Hi there, I'm Wally Goulet. I happen to be one of the co-chairpersons for the Olmsted Commission. And I've been an attorney for over 40 years.
Hi, I'm Veronica Zietz. I'm the Executive Director at the Protection and Advocacy Project and a sitting member on the Olmsted Commission. I have blonde hair and a navy blue suit on.
Hello, my name is Carrie Verner and I am a self-advocate with autism. I am wearing a green blouse and dark green dress pants.
Hi, I'm Julie Horntevet, and I am the Executive Director of the DD Council and also a member of the Olmsted Commission. And I have blonde hair and black clothes and a cheetah print sweater. So I guess I came to party today.
Thank you for introducing yourselves. So I have a couple of questions for you guys. So the first question I have is, where did you grow up?
Well, Imperial Cass County, for those of you that like to hate the east of North Dakota.
I was actually born in California, but I spent my junior high and high school in Grafton, North Dakota.
I grew up in Dickinson, North Dakota.
I grew up in Redwood Falls, Minnesota.
And I also grew up in Dickinson, North Dakota.
That's awesome. So what piqued your interest in the Olmsted Commission? Whoever wants to start us off.
Well, I don't know who of you here knew or worked with Janelle Olson, but she was a longtime advocate for protection and advocacy. And a few years ago, when I was working as a public defender in Williston, I got to know Janelle because her office was just right down the hall. Very friendly lady, and I learned about what protection and advocacy was, what the mission of the entity was, and the next time they had a job opening, I applied for it. And it was to be the coordinator for the state's Olmsted Commission. So that's how I came to be here.
I was asked by Leslie Oliver Bakken to consider, being on the Olmsted Commission. I knew Leslie, and she knew that in the past I had been the Special Assistant Attorney General for the Developmental Center. That's what was named in Grafton at the time. And I also did a lot of work with the DD population in terms of, I was chairman for Friendship, Inc. out of Fargo for 6 years. So I had some background, and I also did a little bit of work in terms of education plans for the DD population. So my history allowed me to consider this, and I think I could add something to the panel.
Generally, I have family members and close friends that have disabilities, and so I'm excited about making sure that everyone, no matter their circumstance, has a chance to choose where they live, what they do with their lives. And so when I was appointed to the commission as part of my job at PNA, I was excited.
I was in an ICF IMR group home shortly after high school and nearly died multiple times from extreme abuse. And after I was officially allowed to leave, I decided that I didn't want anyone else to ever endure what I endured, so that's why I became involved with self-advocacy and ultimately led to finding out about the Olmsted decision.
As the director of the DD Council, we're always looking at inclusion and living in the community you want to live in. And so when I got put into the commission, I was excited to see what we're going to do for the citizens of North Dakota.
So my next question is, what does your lived experience bring to the table?
My lived experience is that because I know what it's like to actually be in an institutionalized setting, I know what it's like to endure abuse, also know what it's like to have no one be charged with abuse because you were blamed for the abuse. I decided to take my experiences and channel them forward so that way those that are also in those types of situations or actually just flat out in an institution can be out on their own, be independent, be who they want to be, and not just coast through life as if, they're nothing.
I can tell you my time in Grafton when I was in junior high and high school, I saw how people were warehoused in the developmental center at that time. And later on, when I was asked to be the Special Assistant Attorney General, I was there after the ARC lawsuit when we deinstitutionalized the developmental center and created a number of developmental homes in communities. So I saw the benefit of that, and then I worked with some of the community. As I said, I mentioned Friendship in the past, and that had homes in both Park River and Grafton and Fargo. So I had the opportunity to work there and see the benefits that were involved.
Growing up as a family member of a person with a disability, I saw how our family really tried to integrate and make sure that my sister was included in all aspects of life, and I also saw that that's not the case for a lot of people. I think that she, as well as we, really both grew as individuals and were more accepting and inclusive. And I guess I would just like to see that be the standard rather than folks being put in an institutional setting.
Is there anything to add, Julie or Danielle? All right, so my last question is, are there interesting areas in disability service provisions that the state could and should explore?
I think it's important for us to keep looking at individualized services, meaning that people should, they should get to pick what they want for them, and it shouldn't be, always in a siloed effort, or it has to be this way or no way, or with staffing, or where you live and the community and the job you have and where you go. And so when we say individualized services, I think we mean that, and we need to really push for that. And so people really can have access to all areas of their life, and they don't have to, always be in groups or told where to work or told where to live. And we all want that for our own lives, and that should be the standard for everybody.
Well, one provision I really hope continues is when people are in group homes or institutions, that they are actually able to fully become independent members of society. I know not everyone can be, released from those places. I understand that. However, they should also be as independent as humanly possible, so that way they aren't totally dependent on staff for everything, because there's going to come a time where staff aren't going to be around and they need to be able to be independent. And so one of the things I'm really hoping for is that independent movement really continues.
I guess I would like to see a greater investment in home and community-based services. I think it's a real shame that people are being sent to the services instead of services being sent to the people. I think the disability community, when served in their hometown and their choice of environment, they have a greater opportunity to contribute to society, which I think is what everybody wants.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with Veronica that one of the biggest challenges for North Dakota is the rural nature of our state and our communities. So it's challenging to have the specialized services there, but I think we've all seen that when you do have the services, and people can stay in their homes, they don't have to go to institutional settings or rest homes. I think we're all better off for it. But that's going to be a continuous challenge for us, as it's not the challenge in Fargo or Bismarck or Grand Forks or Minot, places like that, because the specialized services are there. But we need to work with our legislature and the state of North Dakota to make sure that we get out in the rural communities.
And actually, that's a good segue to some of the things that I'd like to talk about, just in terms of an ask for the people that are sitting here. I apologize for interrupting your lunch with, questions for you, but let's see. This is the Olmsted Commission website. It's olmsted.nd.gov. So if you have questions or commentary or just any feedback on the provision of services to persons with disabilities in the state of North Dakota, you can come and contact us. In fact, we'd very much like you to. I will skip through a few of these because we have really stolen a bit of my thunder, although the kitten is cute. I hope you all agree. This is the current Olmsted Commission makeup. You have 3 of our members on the stage. There's also a judge, a couple of members of the legislature, and the head of the State Council on Independent Living, and a representative from Mental Health America on here. But what I am really searching, all right. That's our email, olmsted@nd.gov. That's an email, that's a phone number that you can contact, 328-2950. If you have questions or feedbacks on how the Olmsted Commission can help North Dakota move forward into the future. We'd really like to hear from you on an individual basis to talk about your experiences with provision of services in North Dakota. And if there's something that you have a particular issue with that's preventing home community-based services from being available or being effective, we'd like you to bring that forward in something that we call an individual inquiry. Also, right now we're forming an advisory council to the Commission. Anybody that feels that they have lived experience to contribute from a personal basis, from a family basis, from a caretaking basis, please get in contact with me at olmsted@nd.gov or 701-328-2950. I'll also be in the back of the room with cards and handouts. We're trying to form a body of people with lived experience to contribute to the Commission that voice of lived experience. And again, the email up there is olmsted, olmsted @nd.gov. It's also on our website, which is olmsted.nd.gov. The phone number, and again, I'll be in the back of the room to talk to after the presentations are done. We also have a Facebook page, which is ND Olmsted Commission, or a Twitter account at ND Olmsted COM, C-O-M-M. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Now, since we have about 10 minutes, let's open it up for questions. Does anyone have any questions for our panel today?
Sir.
Come on. Here's your mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yes, my name is Mitchell Miller, and I would like to get more information about the Olmsted in the North Dakota Olmsted with the business card number and email address.
Anyone else have any questions for our panel? You guys are quiet today. Come on. I'll pick up on the back.
Yeah, I just applied for the advisory committee on Saturday, actually it was. So my name's Elise Olson. I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, thank you. That's the kind of interest we're looking for. So. We should mention, too, that all of our meetings are open to the public, and they're on the website. You'll know when the next scheduled meeting is. See, Roxanne?
I have a child with disabilities. I also work for an organization that helps individuals with disabilities, and you talk about trying to bring people to the home. How are you going to try and help with that from a legislative standpoint? We're losing workers every day. We can't get enough people to help serve these individuals. They need pay raises. Walmart is paying just as much as we are, and we're getting very little amount of money from the state. We can't make it on that.
I think you do a really good point of calling out some of the struggles we're seeing in North Dakota with workforce. I expect in the legislative session starting up in January that there will be probably a lot of things going on that could result in increases for wages and different incentives to improve the workforce problems. But I would tell you that we need your voice at the legislature. The Olmsted Commission can definitely speak up on issues about home and community-based services, but hearing from a real person who's impacted both professionally and personally is really important. We're really lucky because we have one of the most open legislatures in the country, and that means that anybody can come up and testify on a bill and talk about what they want in North Dakota.
You know, I have been with the Commerce Department in the past on their foundation board, and we at that time had 18 to 20,000 unfilled jobs in North Dakota. So that is a continuing problem, and one that we have to get more innovative to address. So you're touching a very sore point that we all need to take a look at. So thank you for your question.
And actually, right now, we're in the process of putting together a study that the State DD Council is helping to fund. It'll be going out, I'll be talking to NDACP tomorrow to talk to community providers in the DD world to get information on workforce recruitment and retention issues, survey of employees, what may help them to stay in the field, what attracted them to the field in the first place, and to see if we can provide some information to legislators to go forward on to say what are the possible routes that they can help the world of the providers.
Just to do a quick plug, if you're a person who's interested in getting involved in the legislative process, or you maybe are unsure about how to work with your legislators, you should talk to Julie about Partners in Policymaking, which is a great training that really prepares you to do some of that work. We're also going to be hosting a Disability Awareness Day at the Capitol this spring, so that would be something that would be a good opportunity for people to mingle with their legislators, talk about what they want to see happening in their communities.
So when we talk about the home and community-based waivers, a lot of our North Dakota is geared more towards that cognitive and intellectual impairment. Have you guys looked at just the kiddos that have physical disabilities and how hard it is for them to get onto home community-based waivered services if they are cognitively functional but are going to be wheelchair bound, like my son with Duchenne muscular dystrophy?
I think that was addressed to a degree in one of the study bills that went through Human Services, and I'm sure that you've had a chance to look at that. It's something that I think the Commission will be talking about at our next meeting now that Evros and Marcel have handed down their recommendations, and we'll be looking at that as it goes forward. But I will say this to you, if there are recommendations in there that you are wholeheartedly in support of, like I assume the combined waiver would be something near and dear to your heart, now is the time to get out and, as Wally and Veronica had said, talk to your legislators, because they're the ones that can really put the shoulder to the wheel and move it forward. And I think that if you saw the size of that report and the size of the recommendations, they'll really, it'll really take a concerted effort to move North Dakota forward in that. It's a big project, and making it known that you support it will probably be a key piece to that.
Just to add on what Dan is saying, at a recent interim legislative committee hearing, they did an overview of what that Human Services report involved. And there was actually a gentleman who spoke up that gets services on the DD waiver, even though he just has a physical disability, and those services aren't always appropriate and are sometimes limiting for them. And him standing up and talking at one of these committee hearings has actually caused a couple of our legislators to ask the Department of Human Services to look into this issue and see what they can do to fix it.
Hello, I have a question. I'm over here. So my name is Janet Kate Walker. I'm from Region 7, Sioux County. I have a son who's on the spectrum, He didn't receive his diagnosis until he was 4. And up until then, he remained uncategorical. But in that time frame, I personally had to transport him from our home in Fort Yates to Sanford Health, Pediatric Therapy Partners, and now Milestones Therapy for therapies. And so when you're talking about community-based services and in-home services, I would love for that option for families in our area. I know that Ann Carlson was willing to come in last fall and really work with our family, but it was the school who wasn't, they were on the fence because he had too many services at one time. And so there was a pushback, and because of the pushback, we actually lost our slot. And so the option now is, once again, to transport him, but there's a conflict with our school. Our school district is saying he misses too much school. So because of the therapies. And so how do you find that balance, and how are you going to address the community-based service options? I also wanted to add, that I was my son's case manager up until he was like 6 or maybe 5 or 6, and I worked closely with Catherine Barchanger, the autism disability coordinator for the state, and we had to search hard to find him a case manager because there wasn't anyone offering case management services to Sioux County. And so we found someone over at West Central, a DD case manager, who is willing to case manage him. So even though he is not on their services, that's where he gets his case management.
Ma'am, I don't think I can give you a off the top of my head magical answer, but I can say that I'd like to talk to you further, and that's the type of individual inquiry that I was talking about. I think that your situation does illustrate some of the real particular problems, especially in the, as Wally mentioned, the non-urban centers of the state, how difficult it can be to find appropriate services and coordinate them. And as the Alvarez Marcel study was talking about, what we can do to, in the future, build a more cohesive and coherent system. But I'd like to talk to you once we're done with this panel.
I think you bring up a good point. Not all school districts are created equal. Some do a great job, and others probably struggle to provide services. One thing I think that we do have to look forward to is that A&M study that Human Services recently did, is they're looking at covering that gap right before school starts. So hopefully we could ensure a smoother transition for our children. I think that we have probably a long way to go there, and it's not going to happen overnight, but I think it could be very positive.
So we have time for one more question. Go ahead.
Okay, I just have a general question. Obviously, you guys work at the Capitol building with our legislators, so first thing that comes to mind would be our transit system. We have a wonderful, wonderful transit system. We worked really hard for it, and is there a way that you guys could help us out to improve that? And just kind of maybe open up a dialogue to see what it is and how you help us improve our legislative?
Not wearing the Olmsted hat, but wearing the DD Council hat, we've identified transportation issues in our 5-year plan to keep working on that to see what improvements can be made. But the local transit system here has also been having calls lately for feedback on hours and holidays and all of that stuff. And we've been sitting in on those. So if you'd like an invite to that, so you can speak up at those when they have their board meetings. We can get you information so I can talk to you after this.
And I've been speaking to some other local advocates about some of the hours changes with Bisman Transit and other things. And I'd love to speak to you further after this to understand your perspective on it.
Well, and just as a reminder, the Olmsted Commission was established as part of an executive order, and one of those areas highlighted is transportation. I do believe Dan is working on a work plan for himself that's going to address each one of those different areas. I think transportation is his first one, so he's going to be doing outreach in various communities to kind of assess where things are at, and then putting together some materials to educate policymakers and others so that we can hopefully advocate for some systems change that improves access to transportation.
All right, so we are out of time, so I want to say thank you again to our panel very much. And you guys will be available upstairs for our social at 4:30 to answer additional questions as I understand it correctly.
I will, and I believe that Veronica and Julie will be as well.
Awesome.
I'm going to ask Wally back especially for that.
Awesome. So let's give our panel a big round of applause, everybody. All right, so we need 5 minutes to switch out our panel, and we'll welcome the board members from the Yes and All groups shortly. Please remain seated, and I'm going to turn the time over to our moderator, Heather.
Hello, I am Heather McDougall. I grew up in Jamestown, and I'm curious, how many of you drove here yesterday? Yeah? Okay, in the wind, right? I mean, we're from North Dakota, we know wind, right? I was driving from Jamestown, right, and it was like this constant, right, 15-degree turn into the wind. I was like kind of nervous I'd show up here. If like you see me walking around this way, like you'll know I just have to like balance it all out. But the thing that I really love about the wind and the big elements that North Dakota invites us into, right, is this chance to say, what is this opportunity to learn? What can we learn from these elements? What can we learn from the large challenges that come to us? And in my life, I've spent the last 20 years doing a lot of things. One of them is studying yogic and Indian philosophy. And it's in that philosophy where we learn about the wind, and that the wind, right, is this force that carries ideas and momentum and energy, and it connects us to all kinds of things, and it kind of feels like, oh my gosh, out of control, or just like so much going on. It's a little bit like a conference, right, where we have so many ideas buzzing about us, the good, the stressful, all of it. And what I've learned to counterbalance this wind is to remember that we have Earth, right? Earth underneath our feet, the gravity that connects us to here and now. And a very magical thing happens when we unite the wind and the earth, right? There comes this center place, this fire. This is what happens in our life too, right? When we are firmly standing in what we believe and allowing the ideas to swirl around, then passion can really ignite. And then that passion, right, we learn how to express, to embrace our voice. I think of it like a dandelion. You know, it's like firmly rooted in the ground, and then once it matures, then the wind blows the seeds, carries its message, carries its impact very far, very wide. For me in my life, this seed of passion of advocacy has found its way to helping advocate for victims of sexual crimes, for social justice, for environmental justice, for students against destructive decisions, all kinds of areas where I can use my voice to help others. And I had such an awesome pleasure of talking with JC yesterday, and I know that your passion, your zone of genius gets so lit up here. We are in for such a treat to hear more from you. And I was thinking about our very opening keynote speaker and describing feelings, right? He was describing how can our feelings be helpful to us. And I think one of the things is that when we are aligned between the wind and the earth, between the ideas and our passion, right, that feeling of freedom, the freedom to fully embrace who we are and what we have to give. So I'm going to play a little song. You might recognize it. It's by Tom Petty. If you want to, you could sing along with me. No pressure. Thank you. Anyway, so let's let the wind be an inspiration, right? Let's let the earth beneath us ground us and remind us of our truth and our strength and that fire in our belly, right? Burn to carry our mission forward. I'm excited to be with this amazing panel here today. We'll get a chance to introduce everyone in just a moment. You're good? Yes. Okie doke. Fantastic. All right, well, hello, everybody. Let me see. I'm going to tuck forward so I can see your faces a little bit. Can you see me?
Yep.
Awesome. Let's start. I know we're still getting a chair set up here, but let's start by, we'll just go down, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Say your name, your organization, your connection here, and we'll move down the line. Should we start with you, Cheryl?
Hi, my name is Cheryl Beer. I'm from Williston, North Dakota, and I'm here Advocacy leading the life call all, and I've been a member for almost 5 or 6 years, and yeah.
Awesome. You said you're from Williston?
Mm-hmm.
So you drove down in the wind too?
Yesterday.
I love the wind. Can you tell? Okay.
Well.
All right. Next.
Trevor Van Epp, Bismarck. I'm a self-advocate, and I also sit on the DD Council for the state of North Dakota, and also many other boards and other commissions to help people with disabilities.
Awesome. Thank you.
My name is Erin Graves, and I have the unique opportunity to not only be a professional, I'm a speech-language pathologist, but also a person living with a disability as well. And I sit on the YES board, and I was one of the original people to sit on that board as well.
My name is Stacy. You've met me earlier, but I also sit on the YES board. I took over for Erin. What was it? It's been 2 years now, right? As the president, and without Erin, honestly, this group wouldn't be the group it is today.
My name is Carl, and I am the vice president of the YES board.
He took over for me.
My name is Renee Whetstone. I'm Colin's mom, and I am the advisor for the YES board.
Awesome. Great. We'll get into some questions, and then we move through those and be thinking in your minds, like, oh, what can I ask these amazing humans up here? Because we'll open it up for some questions in a little bit. To start, thinking about our youth in particular, I know especially, yes, you focus particularly on youth, but you know, we all care about the youth. I'm wondering, how do we effectively teach our youth about self-advocacy, but also about being part of a team?
Want to start there, or should I? Go for it, Jason. So here's my thing, right? You can't teach somebody to advocate for themselves unless you know how to advocate for yourself. And they're not, if they don't want to advocate for themselves, you can't make them do anything. Like, you can't make them do anything that they don't want to do. Our job is to make them want to do it.
Yes. Yeah, it's that, like, it reminds me of the same adage of you can't love anyone until you love yourself, right? In that same kind of idea. So I'm curious, what do you do in that regard? We'll come down to it, but how do you approach that work of helping empower people's self-worth or their desire to be self-advocates?
So, as I told you last night, I just basically tell my story of I was never given the opportunity to say no. If I was, I don't remember it. And hopefully by them hearing that, they will light that fire in their own self to, well, if she can do it, why can't I? And there's an individual on our board who is sitting at one of these tables right now, and he uses an augmentative communication device, and he's wonderful at it. Tyler, stick your head up. There you go.
Yay.
He's wonderful at it, and he has words. He just needs he uses a different device to speak them.
Yeah, so like what you said of not being able, or not, when you said not given the chance to say no, in a sense of like not saying no, right? Like saying yes and telling your story of proving what you're capable of. I'm curious, especially anyone else on the yes board, how do you effectively teach youth about self-advocacy as well as being on a team?
Kind of piggybacking off of JC, I always like to say the saying, say what you do and do what you say. As being somebody with an acquired disability and being a professional, it's really easy to like preach, right? Like, oh, you should do this and you should do this. But unless you are doing it and you are saying you are doing it, it's a whole nother ball game. And so to get youth involved, you need to be there too. And so it's just really leading by example. And I feel like that's really what youth need, is that peer hand.
And I was going to pretty much say what Erin said too. We have to model self-advocacy for our youth. We have to give them skills, teach them about the skills, but we have to model what we're doing. No one's going to self-advocate on their own unless they have those parents that JC had that said, you can't say no. And a lot of us as parents, we tend to want to protect our children, and we do that advocacy ourselves. And we have to learn as parents that we need to let that go and let our kids advocate, because they need to do that for themselves.
Right, Colin?
Yes.
Cheryl or Trevor, do you have anything that you would like to add to that?
Yes.
Yeah. I would just encourage people we need younger self-advocates. It seems like I would just encourage people to get involved. It's fun advocating not just for you, but for other people as well.
It's like there's that community aspect of being around people who support you, but also generate an energy of advocacy. It's great.
Also learn about the history, past. See what they did, and see what issue they comfort, and see what issue we need to comfort now. But most of all, know the issues, understand the issues that we have. There are a lot of issues that we need to work on. And the young group, they need to know that, they need to understand that history, that issue that we have now, so they could be involved, so they could empower their voice. Because once they understand that, and understand that they could be the powerful voices, so we need to give them the tools. We need to really talk about that issue that they may not think of, but encourage that, because everything is hard, it's fun. You could get sad, you could get mad, but that's what the old self-advocacy is, to want to make those changes. So.
Renee, did you have something you wanted to add?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
She said it.
Awesome. Cheryl.
Yeah.
Colin, is
Bless
there
you.
anything you want to add?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, Colin, you want to say something?
Jesus tells me this all the time. Your parents are not going to be there all the time.
So I don't know if you understood him, but I hang out with Colin quite a bit.
24/7.
Like every day. And there's been many times where he'll go to somebody else or come to me to advocate for him, and I'll look at him and go, your parents aren't going to be here forever. You're your own guardian. You need to advocate for yourself. How can I help you?
Awesome. Support. What has been one of the biggest challenges that you've faced in spreading self-advocacy?
The Yes group was started because there was nothing there for kids, kids with disabilities. You know, when your kids don't have disabilities and they go to school, and I have 3 kids without disabilities along with this one with, it's so much easier. They just do things on their own. They've got that independence. When you have your child with a disability, you have to really kind of push them to do it because we want to protect them, and we can't all the time. The other part of this is that once these kids get out of school, they kind of lose their social life. And so by becoming a social group, we put this group together, and we've got them, and we're teaching them the advocacy skills. So it's getting the kids together. You know, that's a big problem.
And I just have something to add on that too. Another big gap that I see is when they're out of school at 21, there's no DD services for anyone 18 to 21. They have to wait until they're 21 to get in day supports and all that. So they don't have those services on the DD waiver like the 18-year-olds would. You know, they don't have the same access as everybody else. They have to wait because they have special needs until they're that magic age of 21. So when I was 18 years old, 20 years old, I had to wait until I hit that magic number because the school districts don't honor that request, and they just kind of make you do whatever, you know. So I think that is something the state needs to work on, is that gap between 18 to 21, because it's a big gap. And like for Colin and JC and I as young advocates, when you're that young, you need things to do to get you energized. And without the Yes group, there would be no self-advocacy in the state. So I'm thankful that we were able to get that. Thank you.
And I want to say something. There is a self-advocacy in the state. The court all. We've been here for almost 5 years. But the advocacy itself, we got to speak up more. We got to advocate for ourselves. Because if we don't do that, nothing will get done. So we all need to come together and work on what we need to work on. Like all had a platform that we work on, and every 2 years we sit down, what is a platform, what we would like to talk to our legislators when we go talk to them. So that advocacy in itself, that after we have advocacy, we need to really get involved with the issues. Parents talk about them. The social worker could talk about them. And the parents want to help us, but they need our help. They need our voice in it. So let's work together with the parent, with everything. My feeling is we all need each other. They need us, we need them. So why can't we work together to make it better for us? And let's start having fun, you guys, with the self-advocacy. But when the work needs to be done, let's get to the table. My thing is, we always need to be at the table all the time. There's a big table. So let's come to the table and talk about the issues.
As she says, the table is basically endless. You just gotta want to step up to that table and be comfortable with. You have to be comfortable with yourself before you can teach others how to advocate for themselves.
It comes from here. It comes like what our speaker said, to know your heart and to know what you need. And it will come out. Everybody come at the table at different times. And that's okay too.
And I think kind of piggybacking off of you, Cheryl, is like it's, getting to the table, and I think of somebody, who I wasn't born, with different needs, and when I came to that table later in life, it was very intimidating to sit at that table because I didn't know that table, right? I didn't know what self-advocacy was. I didn't know the laws. I didn't know my rights. I certainly didn't know health insurance, and that's one of my biggest things, but even somebody to crack that door open, and for me it was a local organization, Dakota Center for Independent Living, and for them to even open that door for me, helped me get that seat at that table. And so I think of like barriers for for youth is just open that door for someone. If you're a professional sitting in here, you just crack that door open for some young person, whether they're 10, whether they're 18, whether they're 30. That's always the first step. And I think back to our speaker, that baby step. And that's what I think most youth really need, is someone to open that door.
Well, and that's the exact same thing, and that's why you need to get in the schools, because if they don't crack that door open, Cheryl, there's no way they're going to know about it. And that's what I see all the time is, oh, I didn't know about this.
I was 4 years old when I started Partners. All my life I did work to hoping to survive society. My mom was a good advocate. But when I was 40, me and my husband took Partners. When Joy showed me what they did to us, it's like I got mad. And I opened up, my voice came up because I was so quiet.
So I like to liken it to, I always say I don't sit on my butt and do any. I might sit on my butt, but I'm always doing something.
Yes.
But Aaron and Colin and Renee and I have a friend who, so if you knew her now, you can't get her to stop talking. But she if she doesn't know you, she'll talk to you with her eyes. And she'll just stand there and wait for you to talk to her.
So when we think about this from a very individual or personal level, what advice do you have if someone or if I feel like my rights are being violated or that I'm not being heard? What advice do you have if someone feels they're in that position?
So for me, if I'm in that position, I try to advocate for myself, but then if that doesn't always work, my parents do live here in town and I try to get their help, but before I do that, I navigate my own pathways, like where do I go next? If my parents aren't working to get this through people's heads, where do I go next? And Renee and Colin can go off of that.
Peace.
Okay, what he's trying to say is if something's not going right, Colin lives in a home and he has a program coordinator, they call them their PCs. And if something's happening with your staff in your home, you go to your PC and report it there. Actually, he's got something else.
You go to your RS.
Okay, RS is the resident manager or resident supervisor. So within the home there's a hierarchy, and you start with I guess you do start with the RS, the resident supervisor, then you go to the PC. And if that doesn't work, You might have to file a complaint with Protection and Advocacy. That's what they're there for. And they're wonderful to work with. I mean, Veronica and Dan and I don't remember who all is here from Protection and Advocacy, but they're so easy to work with. And you can call in and you can say, this is going on. I'm not sure, what I can do about it. They will talk you through it. If they can help you, they will. If it's kind of not at that point yet, they will let you know and kind of give you some clues on what to do. They have an intake line that you call them. Their people are so wonderfully staffed there. It's great.
So you kind of have to be the safe place for the person that needs advice as far as advocating goes.
So if you are the person who's seeking advice or feels unsafe in some way, it's like go to someone you love or someone you trust. Of course, then there's the systems within the home or other systems or protection and advocacy.
Right, and the other thing too is when these guys see something happening with somebody else that they know is not right, they can go to those supervisors, they can go to the person's family. I mean, I've had JC call me about things with Colin. We've had issues with other people, some of Colin's roommates we've had issues with, we've had to deal with some things, and these guys support each other. They need to, because nobody else will do it otherwise, I don't think sometimes, but they support each other very well, and having these friendships that they have has been great.
So if we think from this very individual place, but then also on the systems level, I mean, I think part of the prior panel and the Olmsted panel was getting into a little bit of systems thinking. How can we all be more involved in the systems change? I don't know if maybe Erin, if you have any thoughts or...
You guys, knowledge is power. Like, the more you know, the more you can do. And I think how people can get involved in systems changed is relying on that friendship you guys have in that community, right? Relying on those people that open that door for you, but then taking every moment to soak up that knowledge. And so I think you guys are all actually in the first step here of making that change because you're sitting in these chairs. So, to start being advocates for that change is to show up. Show up.
And nobody up here is afraid to answer a question.
Nope. And there are programs out there to help you learn to do the advocating. And Veronica, I believe, brought it up during the Olmsted Commission panel. Partners in Policymaking is a wonderful program that teaches you how to work on those system changes. It's offered, it wasn't offered for a couple of years over COVID, but there is a program this year, and there will be, I hope, next year too. But if you have an opportunity to take Partners in Policy Making class, it's a wonderful program, and it's at no cost to you. It's all paid for.
That sounds great. Yeah. Go ahead. You go. We'll take what you want to add to this, and then maybe some questions. So if you have some questions, be thinking of it, and we can make sure to get some mics to you.
I think just getting involved, know the issues, talk among each other, and really push. Because with all couple years ago, you remember the decision making, all got behind that. And we wrote letter. I wrote letter to, I would support that. So whatever somebody needs, support that person. No matter if you don't use it, support each other. Get your voice out there. The more you talk about it, the more changes. I mean, it takes a village to raise us. I mean, so let's come together and read that song. And that's self-evident, no matter if you're young or old. And we have a common goal to see the changes. We are here to make the changes, not only for us now, but in the future. Always think about the future. 'Cause the future is the key. We are the key to that future.
And another thing I would just encourage everybody at the legislature when that comes around, you wouldn't unbelieve how much they appreciate the when we're up there, because there's been issues. I will tell you that they ask me questions that I'm on the system and I know what they're trying to do, and when they don't hear from clients, they don't have that lived experience. Like Veronica said, you got to be up there and you got to get them engaged and you got to get them fired up, because the personal stories, when you're talking about appropriations and human services, that's what they need to hear. It's the personal touches.
Personal stories make change.
Yeah, they do. They really do. And they make the department kind of know that we're there and we're watching over the situation.
I think that's so important in any form of advocacy I've been involved with too. When we're thinking of our politicians, I mean, they can't possibly be experts in everything or in most things, right? And so yes, these personal stories and talking to them and helping them understand what is really happening is so valuable. Let's take a couple questions. Who has a question for any of these wonderful humans up here?
I actually have a question for Colin and Renee, and I've asked them this question multiple times, but being from a small town, what changes have you seen in Colin, Renee?
Okay, that's a big one. Okay, I live in a small town. Colin lives in Bismarck. We live in Hazelton. There's like 300 people there, if that. No services, nothing for him to do. There was absolutely nothing for him to do after he got done with high school. And, you know, luckily being in a small school like he was, you know, he was the kid in the wheelchair, but his classmates got to know him so well and actually really helped him out a lot. And I think the kids in his class, for having been with a person with a disability, such a severe disability in their class, are better people for that now as adults. But Colin moved to Bismarck when he was 20. And I do have to say, Trevor, you know, what you were saying about not being able to get services till you're 21, that has kind of changed a little bit. Colin was able to get moved up to Bismarck and into a home when he was 20 years old, which was kind of new at that time. But being involved with these groups that he's involved with, he's involved with Yes, he's involved, what else do you do?
The All Group.
The All Group.
Oh.
And I don't know if you all know. Okay, so YES stands for Youth Empowering Social Status. This group started for 14 to 24-year-olds with and without disabilities. It started kind of as a social group, but we also added the advocating into it, and I've been involved with them since the start. I was not the first advisor, but I've been involved with them since they began. ALL stands for Advocates Living Their Lives, and that is an adult group that is statewide. They meet quarterly, I believe.
Yep.
And learn a lot of advocacy skills through that. There's also an American People group in Bismarck, which is for adults. Basically, it's like Yes, but it's for adults. And kind of working on building that one up. When COVID started, a lot of those people were in group homes and they weren't able to come to meetings, so they kind of fizzled out for a while, but I'm working on getting them back. So there are groups out there for you to get involved with, for your kids to get involved with, and you know, check them out. You know, if you want to, they have Facebook pages. There's websites for them. The Yes Group.
If you want to hear more about the Yes Group, we are going to do a breakout here and right after this, and you'll hear more information from me, Colin, and Aaron.
And the Yes Group has an event. They have a social event once a month. And people are welcome to come, and parents are welcome to come check it out. I prefer the parents not stay there because kids kind of
Are attached?
they get a little, yeah, they're a little bit.
The attachment is an issue.
The what? Say that again?
Attachment is an issue.
Attachment issues. So it's easier for the kids to have a little more freedom if the parents don't stay. But you know, it is what it is.
Staff.
Some people aren't comfortable.
Staff are the key.
Staff are the key.
Oh, the staff are the
Colin says staff is the key. So you know, Colin and JC are in the same day program at HIT, along with several other people that are around. And yeah, staff is. They have some wonderful staff, and that is an important thing. And they help them with that stuff too.
We're like, do we have time? Does anybody have a question? Just want to make sure that we
We'll pick on you.
catch that. There's one over there. Two past my pen, I guess.
I was going to say, don't forget about the Dreams in Motion. It was our, Colin was also involved in the sport of dance. I don't know if that was another one.
Say that again?
Yeah, is that you, Dayton?
Yeah.
Can you speak louder? I didn't hear it.
I just remember if you guys remembered the group Dreams in Motion.
Oh, yeah. There are groups.
There's other
There are
organizations.
other activities. They're not necessarily advocacy groups, but they're organizations. Dreams in Motion does sporting things.
Sporting Chance.
Sporting Chance has some activities for people with disabilities, and those are groups in the Bismarck area. But I know there's groups around the state.
And from my conversation with JC yesterday, that getting involved, like saying yes to those things, can also lead to that self-worth and that desire to be a self-advocate. Okay, one more question.
Yes, I'm from Grand Forks, North Dakota, and I didn't start receiving support systems until I was 21, was it, Vanessa? Yeah, 21 years old. And I had at first I had a roommate, and then after I graduated from that program, back then it was 20 before it changed, and I graduated in ISLA in April of 2022. I'm sorry, 2002. Sorry about that, 20 years ago. And I'm not sure that changed. What do you think? That's a...
I'm not sure I understood the question.
I'm not sure either.
So I'm not sure I understood your question.
Did you have a question, or were you just?
When did that service change to where you guys live? The individual doesn't get services till they're past 21.
Oh, some of that is changing more recently. Colin's 20. Well, he's almost 25, but he was able to move into a home in Bismarck, into a group home in Bismarck when he was 20, which was kind of unusual. They're just kind of starting to work on some of that and letting him go a little bit earlier.
December was my 21st birthday.
Oh, and you move. That's the other thing I want to say is group homes aren't for everybody. So make sure make sure that you're using your voice, and if you're not comfortable, find a way out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone up here. Such an honor to chat with you and help you use your voices. And thanks to all of you. Oh, one more question. Announcement.
Sorry. One announcement. If you want to hear more from the group, the Yes Board and All Board, room 102 at the next session is just a comfortable conversation about what they're doing. And also for the next sessions in the afternoon, if you would like an ASL interpreter, I'll stand back here if you want to let me know so we can make sure she gets to the right room.
Great.
Thank you, Julie. I was just going to bring that up.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.